Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon or good evening for those joining us from different time zones. A very warm welcome to this masterclass brought to you by People Matters in association with Coach Hub. My name is Mint. I'm from the People Matters editorial team, and it's my privilege to welcome all of you to this exciting session for today. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out to join us for this exclusive masterclass. Today's discussion will focus on a pair of themes that are of great interest to many of us: coaching, specifically digital coaching, and the hybrid working model. The question is, how can digital coaching be the solution to thriving in a hybrid workplace? Now, hybrid work has become something of a norm, if not an aspiration, for many businesses today. Just ask almost any progressive minded company, and they'll tell you they have been looking into ways to make the hybrid model work. But at the same time, it's a big change for many of us. Up until last March, as we all know, the norm was working from a fixed location during fixed times. We've had less than 2 years, and it's been a very disrupted and uncertain 2 years at that to adapt. Even today, people are still struggling with the basics: communication, collaboration, maintaining work life boundaries in a hybrid world. Now, how do we navigate this? In the traditional pre pandemic workplace, quite a lot of us would go looking for a coach, a mentor to help guide us through such challenges. In today's evolved and disrupted work setting, we can still go looking for a coach, but a digital one. So, why digital? How does it help? How does it help to guide us? To answer these questions, I'm very excited to invite our speaker for today's session. It's my pleasure to introduce Naila Abdul Karim, Senior Behavioral Scientist at Coach Hub. Hello, Naila. How's it going?
Hi, great. Thank you so much.
Wonderful to have you here. Now, Naila's key mission at Coach Hub is to connect science with practice while leveraging psychology, coaching, research, and business expertise every day to create the best and most evidence based solutions. She's a psychologist herself. She holds a master's degree in business psychology. She's a certified coach and mentor, a member of the British Psychological Society and Association of Talent Development. So she absolutely knows what she's talking about when she tells you about digital coaching, the hybrid model, and the human element involved in all of this. Welcome, Naila. It's wonderful to have you on board with us.
Thank you so much, Mint, for such a lovely introduction. Good morning to everyone. Once again, Naila Abdul Karim with you. I'm a senior behavioral scientist at Coach Hub. And today I would like to invite you on a journey to explore how we can thrive within the hybrid workplace. Perhaps we can get the slide deck on. Thank you so much for this. So, before we dive deep into the topic, I would like to do a bit of housekeeping as well. As we know, this session is recorded, and in case you miss any part of this, you can always revisit the section and watch it. And also, we would be doing a poll throughout the session today. And during this time, we would be sharing the link to the poll as well as the code that you would need to access. Alternatively, there's also going to be a QR code you can also use to your phone to scan this and join the poll. And also, we would have some time allocated at the end of the session to take some questions. And I will also try as we go along to pick up some of those interesting questions. So please feel to type those burning questions in the chat box that you have. All right. Perhaps now let's move into some of the juice. So some key topics that we're going to cover today would be a quick overview of who Coach Hub is, and then diving a bit more deeper into why the need of digital coaching in the hybrid workplace, and what are some of the measures and how these digital coaching impacts the organization and how we can measure some of these impacts. And by last, I would like to nicely wind up to say how you, as a people's people, can perhaps include or align digital coaching into your growth strategy. And perhaps I can give you some tips and tricks that you could kickstart this process already. And as I said, at the end, we will also take some questions. All right. Now a bit about Coach Hub. We are a global coaching company offering high quality coaching at scale. Our mission is to democratize coaching for all levels across the world. And to support us in this journey, we have 300 plus coaches who support in 360 different languages. Now, let's get deeper into the question. Why the need for digital coaching in hybrid workplace? But before that, I would like to get a bit of sensing of the room in terms of, is hybrid workplace the future of your office? And for this, I'd like to invite you to do a quick check-in. If you could pull out your phones and scan the QR code, or I believe Mint is going to drop in the link and the code to this poll. It would be great to hear some of your views on this before we kickstart. I'm going to give a few seconds here for you to get onto the poll. Right. I'm going to just open the page. You have the code. We already have some response coming in. Keep those numbers coming in, everyone. Oh, we definitely have quite a skyrocketing yes out here. I'll give a few more seconds to get. Definitely. Oh, wow. Okay. We are having a no and a maybe. Fair. That is a possibility in some industries where hybrid workplace may not be suited. All right. Fantastic. Great. So I think the poll is perhaps talking for itself. We do have a strong yes that's happening here. Thank you so much. Please keep those polls coming in. What I'm going to do is then further explore and see what exactly is the research and data also talking about this. But I think this poll is already giving it away. Well, thank you for that. So as we know, hybrid workplace is definitely inevitable. And I think your poll was a good reflection of that. We had a recent global survey done by Microsoft that covered about 31 countries. And it kind of explored some of the key questions around what exactly employees want. And then we saw over 70% of workers wanting that flexible remote working option to continue. At the same time, we also found 65% who are craving more in-person time with their teams. And thus, you can see this hybrid paradox here. Why potentially this is happening is that sense of autonomy that individuals are craving. And the pandemic has definitely pushed us out of our usual way of business or usual way of working. So hence the paradox. And to prepare for this, we have about 66% of business decision makers considering redesigning physical workspaces to better accommodate hybrid work environments. We also know there are certain great benefits that come with hybrid workplace, such as higher productivity, increased employee happiness, and definitely feel safe throughout the commute, and also saving cost and time that initially employees spend around commute to work. So therefore, we do know hybrid workplace is definitely inevitable. But if this is the case, the next burning question that pops up is, do organizations and employees have the right traits and tools needed to thrive in hybrid work environments? We definitely have seen in the past 19 months that organizations and employees have gone through massive change out of our usual norms, out of our usual know-hows. And we also know with great benefits that hybrid workplaces bring, it also brings with certain challenges. And some of these challenges are lower sense of belongingness, struggle to collaborate, perhaps those tricky work-life balances. And I'm sure all of us have experienced that in a sense. And lesser social connection, where we already touched earlier on that hybrid paradox where employees do want that flexibility to choose between hybrid work mode, as well as craving for that personal connection. So this question still stands. Do organization and employees have the traits and tools? Now I'd like to explore some bits around some of these traits. Based on some fantastic organizational psychology research, we know now there are certain key traits that support individuals to thrive in hybrid work environment. And they are three: curiosity, empathy, and openness to experience. And I'm sure these words or these traits are very familiar to all of us, but just let's dig a bit deeper into what this actually means. While curiosity is about proactively seeking out different point of views, listening to others, learning and reflecting on what you heard. And people who are curious are often open to new perspective, welcome respectful exchanges of ideas, as well as channel their learning into actions. In fact, they also recognize that each of us is exposed to just a fraction of the world around, and they value that insight and diversity and the difference that brings in. Whereas empathy is a skill that helps connect to identify and understand others' thoughts, perspective, and emotions, and demonstrating that understanding with an intent of care and concern. And we do also know with some brilliant research that empathetic leaders is the leader who demonstrate care and concern and understanding of employee life circumstances, where higher or more the empathetic the manager, higher the performance. As empathy also helps colleagues bond together and form the foundation of resilient and inclusive workspace, which becomes even more important in this day and age of hybrid workplace. Last but not the least is also openness to experience. Since the hybrid age that we all are experiencing, this has definitely diluted the norm governing around work. Especially organizations are in the process of building these governing policies and trying and finishing this process. While that is happening, you're much more likely to thrive if you find ways to come up with new ideas, to turn those ideas then further into innovative ways and be open to new ways of working. And openness also helps defy your own expectation and question your own assumptions. And it is able to ground a deep sense of interest for exploring new things. And how I like to say this is it makes you comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's something that we all have had to pick up the last 19 months or so. Now, having spoken about some of these key traits that can support employees thrive in hybrid workplace, how or what potentially can be a tool that can support build some of these traits? And also another question that might arise around this is, are these traits innate? Do people already come with these traits? Well, great news for us is these are unique traits that can be built on. It's like that muscle that you focus and further hone all three skills or all three traits. And this is where I like to bring in a fantastic tool that can support, and that's digital coaching. Now, the first question would be, what is digital coaching? It's definitely not the one as you see on the screen. It's not where an individual has a coaching session with a chatbot or an AI. It's definitely a coach in flesh and blood. But before I jump a bit more deeper, I would like to take a step back and get the room to have a sensing around what exactly is coaching. I'm sure you know what coaching is, but let's just level that ground and make sure everybody is on the same page on this. So coaching is a partnership with a client or a coachee in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. And the process of often unlocking previously untapped sources of imagination, productivity, and leadership. So Since that's out of the way, we know what coaching is. How exactly coaching can support these three traits that we just spoke, right? So the first one I'd like to share around curiosity, a personal experience. There was a time when I was going through massive major change, moving countries, at the same time moving jobs during the pandemic. It was a lot happening. And I was thankful that I had a coach who helped me kind of bring some clarity around this. So I remember one of the sessions, that first session, she asked me, "Oh, Naila, how are you feeling?" And I was like, to be honest, overwhelmed. There's so many moving pieces, and I'm trying to find where to begin. And then she asked a very interesting question around, well, Naila, why don't I invite you to be a bit curious? Curious about your situation. And when that curiosity comes, what would you do? And that very question is definitely a pivoting moment for me. And I was like, obviously, if I was personally curious, I would want to really understand, where is this overwhelming feeling coming from? Where is it stemming from? What can I do about it? And what are the resources I need to address them? So that one question around curiosity opened my perspective, and there was a shift from feeling completely overwhelmed towards finding ways to address being overwhelmed. What can I do? And that kind of built that curiosity. And curiosity is a phenomenal trait and can support, and it's also a great predictor for an individual's capability to learn and thrive. And through coaching and through a coaching journey, curiosity is one of the key elements that a coach enables within a coachee. Empathy, then, is another crucial element. Through coaching, we know that this process helps create self awareness. And once you're self aware about how you feel, then you're able to extend this to people around you. And you also experience empathy at a great level from your own coach. And once you start experiencing that for yourself, you're able to extend this further to others. But last but not least, open to experience. I like to call a coaching journey or a coaching connection to be a very safe space where you get to spar with your coach, and your coach supports you to exploring new challenges, possibilities, and probabilities in that safe space. So therefore, coaching is considered to be one of the most effective tools that can help build some of these traits within your employees. Now, again, we still have a question that's still not answered. What exactly, or how different perhaps, digital coaching is from the traditional coaching? Let's put it that way, just for ease. Well, the main difference, or the only difference I would like to say, is between coaching and digital coaching is the geographical distance, of course, and the ability to maximize latest technology such as AI to improve the coaching process for both coachees and organizations. And we have been democratizing, for instance, at Coach Hub by offering coaching as a digital solution such that it's able to access more people within an organization, is effective, it's scalable, and also measurable, which enables, as I mentioned, reaching larger populations within organizations. And digital coaching, and I think this is one of a very interesting aspect of digital coaching, is you're giving an opportunity to employees to take control of their own learning journey. And this is definitely with coaching as well. But something unique about digital coaching is where a coachee or a client gets to decide who their coach is going to be, when and how they would like to set their coaching sessions. Unlike in the past, where we would need a lot more logistical support of booking a meeting room, the travel, the cost, all that is taken care of with digital coaching. And this, especially in the pandemic times that we live, is giving back them a sense of autonomy, that they have control over certain elements. And digital coaching also supports a person to grow as a person as well as a leader and inspire others around them. Now, what are some of the areas digital coaching can support you? Especially if, you know, at the core of digital coaching sits sustainable behavioral change. Change that supports managers and leaders to navigate and explore, as I mentioned earlier, challenges, new perspective, and solutions to tackle the new way of work. Now, for instance, digital coaching can enable managers with new skill set to manage in the new reality or to support an overall cultural shift. Or for another organization, it can mean to support a manager who is a new manager who is transitioning into the new way of works. And also another key topic these days, or definitely a topic that is even more focus in 2022, is going to be diversity and inclusion. A manager can have diverse teams, and especially in hybrid workplaces, managers need to be more mindful of their teams and the dynamics. Different households. And as a manager, you cannot have one cookie cutter solution for all your teammates. Is able to shift and switch. And digital coaching can support managers through that journey. And as we also know, digital coaching supports organizations through various junctures that helps people smoothly transition through uncertain times with an outcome of sustainable behavioral change. Now I'd like to take a quick pause to see if we have any questions, burning questions from our audience.
Oh, yes, Naila. We do have a couple of questions from the audience, and they come down to this one theme. How do
Yeah.
we get past the obstacle of being online, where it's not easy to create rapport?
Right. That's a great question, Min. Thank you for that. Yes, maybe I'd like to start with an example. At the start of the pandemic, I was based in Singapore at that time, and I had a lovely client who wanted to start her coaching journey. But due to the restrictions that was imposed, face-to-face interaction was not possible. And at the beginning, she was a bit hesitant to do a virtual session with her coach. And and she kept pushing back to say, no, I want to see my coach in person because I feel this experience is going to take away from that whole process. But when we also realized the challenge here was we were not really sure when the restrictions would open and when we would be able to get this person on the coaching journey, and we didn't want to take away from that experience because again it was very uncertain times. And then we decided, why not invite her to have a session with her coach, which would not even be considered as a coaching session at that time, and to just give her a sense of feel. She agreed in terms of that. She completed her first session, and she felt quite comfortable and quite surprised to find that her session with her coach did not take away from any of the elements of connection or that rapport. In fact, she made sure to continue virtually, even though Singapore then opened slightly up, which facilitated face to face. So why this? Why this? This example? It's just to illustrate that virtual coaching or digital coaching does not take away from the element of building that rapport. And the pandemic has just really accelerated this reality for us. And we also have wonderful research by Berry et al. That says there is no significant impact between virtual or digital coaching versus a face-to-face coaching. It does not take away. In fact, we also know sometimes for those introverted folks amongst us, me along as well, who enjoys to have that space that is created through the virtual world where you're more comfortable. So I hope I've answered the question. So it's about that initial building, relationship that the coach-coachee builds, how comfortable the coach ensures the coachee feels for the journey. So thank you so much for Mint for that question. I'm sure there are more questions. We'll potentially take that at a later stage through the session. All right, let's move on then. Great. So now, what are some of the impact of digital coaching across the organization. So by now, we already have explored or unpacked hybrid workplace is definitely inevitable, and some of the traits that can support thrive in such work environments, and how coaching and digital coaching can support employees through this. But let's go further to see how exactly does digital coaching impact an organization. Here, it impacts at three different layers. Let's, for instance, start with your manager. As an individual, digital coaching supports and help grow an individual. And as we know, in the new way of working, new management skills are key. And these new management skills are honed through digital coaching as a process. Similarly, performance and engagement, as we also know, is increasing with the facilitation of conversation through coaching process. And this then, enables to create that psychological safety for your managers. And then there's this nice trickle down effect at a team level, at an employee level, where coaching then starts supporting transformation. We know that coaching enables engagement, increase in performance, and, with clearer expectations set. And this is definitely drawn out by the improved communication with the manager and teams. And as I mentioned, the psychological safety once built for the manager starts trickling this down. Once I feel psychological safe within an organization, I'm able to, embody this for my own team. I can start creating and building this. And we also know by some brilliant research done at Google, one of the most high performing teams, one of the key ingredient for high performing teams is psychological safety. And it becomes even more important when we go virtual or in hybrid work mode. And then this is further transformed and cascaded across the globe or across the organization, where digital coaching supports a safer and a stronger company culture to be instilled, as well as measurable impacts on performance and results are also drawn from this process. And at last, but not the least, it helps increase employee retention. So these are some of the effects that digital coaching can have across an organization. Maybe some numbers in terms of how it impacts, right? So we do know from research that 77% has improved collaboration through coaching. At the same time, it's also helped reduce staff turnover and definitely also increased about 8 times in return on investment. So having said that, coaching creates a ripple effect. And this means that you can maximize the impact and reach of coaching programs across your organization. And we do know through literature that the immediate network around a leader who's gone through a coaching program start experiencing positive impact from the coaching program. And as a result, when launching some of these programs, we begin to identify these key influencers who are having large networks around them and actively interacting with these members of that network. Now, starting to offer coaching to these individuals starts building that momentum towards creating a coaching culture for the organization. Now, having said that, how do we go about measuring some of this impact within an organization? For few of you who may already know that coaching has, over the years, been plagued or been in the shadows of having lack of transparency, not having a number, and not being very tangible talent solution that's being offered. And this was one of a key concerns, for instance, at Coach Hub, that we have been thinking over and over, trying to see how we can support our clients really measure the impact of coaching. And therefore, we have developed or come around a model that goes beyond quantitative data just to capture the entire value of coaching. Instead, we take a holistic approach. And what does that mean by taking a holistic approach? As we already have spoken of some of the impact and benefits of coaching. Sometimes to calculate or numerize that might be a challenge. That's definitely a challenge. So therefore, we recommend to take a holistic approach of evaluating. And this approach helps measure the true return on investment of coaching, which is also continuous and outcome-based evaluation in nature. Now, as you can see here, is the coaching value chain that we have created. And this basically is a holistic understanding of what impacts does coaching bring to an organization, and also understand what are the multiple variables that are at play and surface around your particular organization. And we have used Hawken-Turner's, for some might find this model a bit familiar. We have adapted this from logic chain or theory of change. And in this process, this enables us to take a look at the whole value chain of coaching and evaluate at each step. Now, traditional coaching, as we know, the challenge there was you would only know the impact of it at the end of, for instance, a 6 months program. And you were really not sure. And at the 6 months program, it was still not 100% win. It might at times, if it was a success, fantastic. But what happens if it wasn't? The question is like, had we known it earlier? So then this was, as I mentioned, was a traditional approach. So this was also at the heart of us while thinking and building this model. This, it may look linear, but this is cyclic. And it helps us to iterate at all the different stages and learn from these stages to see how we can further impact or pivot if needed. In fact, a more agile way to address. Now, maybe let me invite you to go through a bit more of detail of what exactly does input, output, result, and value creation actually mean, right? So this is a breakdown of what each of the components look like. So, for instance, let's start at the starting. So, what do some of the inputs mean? Of course, this is the start of any program. It involves a coach and a client or a coachee, and we have the HR expects and the coaching intervention once it kicks off, or that's the program that starts off, and the coaching contract, and also an optional but quite an important one would be sending a survey around coaching readiness and motivation. So just to get a sensing of the organization before they start the program. And in terms of output, you will start recognizing some of these level from Kirkpatrick's model. We have incorporated it. And this is in terms of reaction of the program, learning, and behaviors attained. So what we like to do is embed certain evaluation criteria along the way throughout the coaching journey, and not in fact wait at the end to get an overall sensing. So this already gives us information around coachee satisfaction, working alliance. Well, working alliance, I would say, is one of the most key ingredient that determines the success of any coaching program. And what does working alliance mean? It is the coach-coachee relationship. And we know 70% of a coaching successful program is determined on this. And basically also general satisfaction of the coachee throughout the journey. So at the beginning, throughout the process, we are already getting a sense of the coachee. And some of the other elements that also measured is learning some of the new insights they have picked up, new skills, and behaviors that they have implemented or brought about change. And at the next level is around the results. Now, we want to know what impact of our outputs that we just spoke now. What are some of the consequences of these learning and new behavior? So we start looking at both at an individual level and at a team level. So this can mean at an individual level, an individual must have developed clear communication skills, more focused in time, higher satisfaction. And this then starts to create that ripple effect that I spoke of earlier, where as a team, they're able to have better conversation, improved collaboration, and enhanced work performance. Now, finally, now we have these three elements where evaluation is taking ongoing on an ongoing basis. Finally, on the value creation level, we look at what all these initial first steps mean to a business, and that is what value is created from a coaching program, such as it can be high retention, increased revenue, and profitability. So the key goal of the coaching value chain to have strategic conversation within the business and really boil down to see some of the business goals that coaching is paying into. And some of you may be already doing this, which is fantastic. Maybe some could use this going forward across the entire business. And of course, maybe other factors at work here can be a training program that you're already offering or an organizational change that affects your workflow where coaching can work as an amplifier. So taking a step back, this is how we can support you create the value chain in an iterative manner, which is more measurable, trackable, and understanding the true value of coaching and how that impacts the organization. Now at Coach Hub, for instance, we do this at 3 tiers in terms of evaluation. We take evaluation quite seriously. It's quite important for us. And at the core is definitely the output results that we already spoke about. Then it can be self-rated evaluations, as well as quantitative and qualitative data. At the second tier, when we can extend this evaluation, it can mean designing specific, results measure, just specific to the program. Or it can be multi-rated evaluation, like 360s, 180s, or impact on others, or even longitudinal measure where we build the program in such a way after 6 or 12 months of completion of the coaching program. What impact or benefits has been reaped? Now we can further extend that into a full-blown research evaluation where we can collaborate with some of our academic partners to create a full research study, or as well as create and develop dimensions that are best practice aligned. So these are some of the evaluation methods that we use at Coach Hub. Now let's look at some of the insights we have drawn, for instance, at Coach Hub through coaching value chain process that I just walked you through. And we do know that 96% of the coaching relationship between a coach and coachee has been positive, and 96 of them have agreed to it. Similarly, 90% of the coachees have said coaching has helped them achieve the goals that they have set at the initial of the coaching session, whereas 89 said they've gained new perspective. But I think the most important number here is the 79%, which is a significant number, that talks about how individuals, the coaches, were able to integrate successfully behaviors. And that's a big one. So here are some of, in numbers that we have been able to take from the value chain. Now, on that note, I'd also like to take a quick pause to check with Mint. Do you have any burning questions from the audience before we further down again?
Oh, yes, Naila, we have quite a few questions lined up. Let's
Sure.
start with this one that's very implementation based.
Yeah.
Somebody is asking, how many people should we target to participate in the coaching program? Who should we prioritize?
Right. That's a great question. Thank you, Mint, for that. So the first part is how many people should you, or how many participants should you target? This is very unique organization to organization. But the best practice would always be to start off with a pilot program. And this would mean to sample a percent from your larger population. For instance, if it's part of a leadership program, would be great to start, I wouldn't say there's a ballpark number, but it's again something that's been discussed with individual customers to see what works best for them. But it's to take a sample size of the larger cohort. And this can be customized based on their needs. So starting that off with a pilot program, then who is the priority, right? Who are the people that we want to really target? If you remember, I earlier mentioned of the ripple effect. Those and those individuals who are key influencers within your organization, who have those larger networks, those would be some of the key individuals, as well as we also want to look out for those ambassadors for coaching, for those who have experienced coaching, or for those who are excited of these opportunities. So these are the people who would be the driving force for your coaching program. And as we know, any change initiative that brings across an organization when you're introducing a new program, having those champions, building that excitement really kickstarts that coaching journey on a fantastic note. So I hope I have answered that question. Thank you so much, Mint, for that. All right, now hopping back into our presentation. We're almost to the end of our session. So here I would like to discuss how then, you can integrate or align digital coaching into your growth strategy. Now, when we think about growth strategy, we think, the first few words that will pop up is market penetration, product diversification, and product development. However, there is a fundamental step that many organizations miss out to put enough emphasis on, and that's people development. And a concrete growth strategy must start with your people. With people at the heart of your growth strategy, innovation, creativity, and all the other areas that we just discussed earlier about will start affecting or resulting in that ripple effect. And this is where digital coaching and its ability to scale will have considerable impact for your organization. And we do know most method of online training do not take into account long-term knowledge retention. And for long-term results, an organization have a responsibility to ensure that information not only becomes a skill, but also an innate habit. Coaching, however, is not a training program, but instead an auxiliary tool and an effective way to ensure long-term and sustainable behavioral change. And I like to call coaching or digital coaching as a tool within an organization's toolbox to enable sustainable change, behavioral change within their people to drive change or transformation. And therefore, we ensure to link the company growth strategy with the people or employee mindset, because that's where, at the core of any business, your people matters. Perhaps, perhaps now I can give you some pointers around how to empower your people to execute their own organizational vision and strategy, and yet thrive in the world of ever changing, constant change. Well, perhaps you could start or consider coaching as a part of a change management initiative where coaching can support unique needs of your organization and strategy can change management goals. Or, you could use to scale employee access to coaching by training managers and leaders on how to use coaching skills by offering them this as a training. And then, as we know, this then has start having that ripple effect across the organization. Also, another way of including coaching is perhaps, enabling coaching as a part of an existing program. It can be, for instance, an emerging leaders program, high potential, new manager, leadership development, and so on, where coaching can be specific training that is, offered. This can be through internal or external coaching practitioners, just so that your leaders and managers are deepening their coaching skills. And that then brings me to my last potential area that you can include is to help managers and leaders to determine when, where, and how often to apply coaching skills. Without organizational support and feedback, they may not able to, a lot of times we do see managers and leaders may not able to prioritize this as a use of their skills in their managerial approach. And therefore, I would like to wind our session by saying coaching is one of the most effective tools in any organization's or company's armory during times of transition or change. And now I would like to invite you to take another poll and also open the floor for any questions we may have. The same process, Mint would drop in the link for you, and you can use the code to access. And please feel free to type away some of the key takeaways that you have had in this session. And also, Mint, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
Oh, yes, Naila. We've got quite a list of questions lined up. Looks like people are very
Sure.
interested in how to implement and execute the suggestions you raised.
Yeah,
Let's start with one on measuring the impact. An audience member asks, how
yeah,
do we link continuous learning to coaching?
sure. Once. I'm sorry, I just had to slide that. Can you come that once again, Mint, on that?
No problem.
Yeah,
So the question we have here is to do with continuous learning, a very big thing
yeah,
nowadays because we're talking about
absolutely.
upskilling, about
Yes.
improving, upgrading. And this audience member asks, how do
Sure.
we link continuous learning to coaching?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic question again. As we know, every organization does, embark every employee to go through the continuous development journey. This can be through on the job training, training programs, micro learnings, and, in this time and age, is so many different modalities of learning. But interestingly, we also know a lot of times this learning is this effectively being imparted? Is there a transfer of learning into the actual job? And we do have some research around this saying not necessarily. Unfortunately, there's about a 49% of L&D initiatives that go or experience wastage. We also know the forgetting curve that people do start experiencing to forget some of the key elements. Now, for instance, the other day, hilariously, I was asked, Naila, what did you have for dinner? And it took me a minute to actually realize I just had it, a few hours ago, and I just still couldn't recall. So imagine going through a training program after a week or two and still being able to retain so much of information. And as humans, we are exposed to a lot of informational stimuli every single day. So we need to start cascading what's important and what's not. And a lot of times, some incredible information that is, received or experienced or absorbed through the continuous learning process is missed. And that's where coaching can be an acceleratory tool that can support. So we do know by research that coaching helps that stickiness where individuals are able to kind of choose and decide what exactly is super keen or super important for their role or for the business to inherit. And in that coaching space, they can spar with their coaches and kind of find ways to implement of where you're doing, you're actioning, and you're talking about it. So this kind of, helps learning to retain. So therefore, continuous learning is in fact extra bonused by coaching, where it helps information retain successfully.
Thanks, Naila. That's a really good point about the stickiness of learning and having to reinforce it. Now we have another question here, which is
Yeah,
quite related to the value chain.
yeah,
Someone is asking, we are
yeah,
trying to coach our employees to be more agile.
yeah.
What kind of measurable outcomes should we focus on?
Ooh, that's a very interesting one. Well, I like to take a step back. It all starts from the burning question around here. What does agile means for the organization, right? So this is where we take a consultative approach to really finish and understand what does agile work mean for an organization. Now, and again, agile work or agile way of working is such a broad term. For instance, it can be a team that is going through a major product delivery or product submission. So, for them, being agile means there are certain key metrics that are on this. So that would mean work in progress. delivery of different layers. So depending on the context of what agile means for an organization, these measures can be actually designed or even brought into the forefront for more discussion to see how then coaching is adding value to some of these processes. Or at a larger scale, to take another step back, is to then consider how coaching can then bring that agile mindset where there is a sense of continuous learning, where employees are being able to quickly absorb information and pivot when needed. So I would say it ultimately depends on what an organization is looking and how are they looking for coaching to impact them. So once we understand the pain point, then we are able to link those two key metrics that is observed within the organization and how we can link that through coaching.
Thanks, Naila. That was really insightful, and I think it helped to clear up a lot of misconceptions that people have around agile and what agile really means when you're working.
Yeah.
Now, I have here a rather interesting question. It's to do with demographics.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage some older managers who may be
Mm-hmm.
more used to a greater power distance
Yeah.
to adopt coaching, which is obviously a slightly a milieu where you're on a level with the person, but these people are more used
Absolutely.
to speaking from top.
Absolutely. That's a very good question. And, sometimes we do experience quite a bit of resistance, right, when we are introducing anything new, right? So then it's to really tackle an understanding where this resistance is coming from and how can we understand. Now, for instance, um, a lot of times we have seen that first barrier of having the first conversation with their coach. And in that first conversation with their coach, a lot of misunderstanding or misconception around what coaching means is elevated because then they realize we're just having a conversation with another person and all they're doing is asking us very interesting questions around things that we have not actually thought about, right? So it's enabling them to experience it for the first time and then getting them to think differently, different approach, bringing that new perspective. And once you start bringing these new perspective through the coaching journey, there is a significant shift. Sometimes when you start thinking of all these ideas within our own minds, there is a tunnel vision. But the moment you start sparring this with a coach in a safe space, it starts opening up new perspectives. And we have seen again in research how this shift has happened. So I would say if you do have older managers who has the top down, I would say give them an opportunity to experience, educate them. I think what at the beginning of this resistance is education, is to find the right way to educate and give the right resources and understanding of what coaching exactly is. It's not going to take away from your control or top down. It's just adding more to some of your capabilities. It's just making you as a leader more versatile. And I think messaging is super, super key here. So yeah, these are some of the things that you could do.
And that's a really great point about about messaging it such that they understand the value to them. And
Yes,
just that idea that you open a little bit and the coach will help to open the rest.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now we're looking at one rather sticky question here.
Mm-hmm.
Seems rather subjective one. And someone is
Right.
asking,
Mm.
how do you know if the assigned coach is a good coach?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So we have several layers to that, especially for instance. Let me give you an example. Let's picture this bit, right? If if it's a coachee who's experiencing coaching for the first time, as a part of some of the programs we design at Coach Hub, we start the journey by educating the coachees around what to expect from a coaching journey. Because again, it's not expected that everybody has had a coaching relationship in the past. And in this session, we kind of open up some of the areas and what to look out for and what to be mindful of. So also we know, and we also kind of clarify what this coaching actually is. We do know one thing: coaching is not mentoring, coaching is not psychotherapy or any form of therapy or even counseling. Coaching is a space where the coach enables, ask you questions that you might have not thought about. It's basically encouraging you to find your own solution. So, how does a coach coachee know that he or she might not be the right coach? Maybe some of these elements are not being hit or addressed. So where I'm coming from is we do make sure we are educating also the coachees of what to expect from a coaching program. What is a coaching? What is coaching? And what are some of the key highlights that you're going to experience through the journey? So this itself enables that education piece for each coachees. And also, some of the programs we design enables for a coachee to change coaches if they find that alliance, as I spoke earlier on, working alliance, which is super, super key for any success of a program. If the coachee feels that the relationship is not there and they're not getting along, it can happen. It can happen. And they can always request to change for a coach. And we also enable for a coachee to choose from a variety of coaches. We offer them 3 coaches to begin with. And if they don't find these coaches aligned to their values, they can choose another 3. So they do have that options. Unlike in the traditional coaching sense, where we would have initially 1 to 2 coaches, where we'll do a chemistry session and then we're set to go. With the digital coaching platform, we can enable a lot more features and more flexibility and agility in how coachees experience coaching. And we want to make sure they're experiencing the full-blown benefits of coaching. So I hope I have answered that question. It was a tricky one. So yeah, we enable the coachee with all the necessary tools to identify. Ultimately, any coaching relationship, the coachee is on the driving seat, and the coach is someone who's going to support them through that drive. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you
Naila. That
so
was a
much.
really good point about the coachee being the one in the driving seat and the whole thing being driven by the coachee's expectations. So it's very much to do with what the coachee themselves needs out of it. So
Yeah.
in one sense, you can't really say there's such a thing as a good or bad coach. It's a coach that is a fit for the coachee.
Absolutely, exactly right. On that note, Mint, I'm mindful of time as well. I'm just going to quickly look at key takeaways. Thank you so much, everybody, for for some of these takeaways. We do have some more questions. We would make sure to answer some of them throughout the process and get back to you on this. Now, on that note, if you have enjoyed some of the content that we have been sharing today, we do have a next session coming shortly. I'm going to host this with my colleague Tim, and this is going to be talking around the Great Resignation. And we know this is quite the buzzword in this time. So please feel free to join us. Mint would be putting in a link to register for this, and then we'll take it up from there. Yeah. Thank you so much once again. It was a pleasure having you all on board, and I hope to see you in our next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Naila, for the great session. But today's insights are definitely valuable for anyone who's feeling challenged by the hybrid model, and definitely for those who want to seek out coaching but aren't sure about doing it digitally. With
Sure.
this, we have come to the end of today's session. Thank you again, Naila, and an extra big thank you to our partner Coach Hub for today's wonderful collaboration. It's been a pleasure hosting all of you. Do stay tuned to your inbox for details on our upcoming events and virtual learning sessions. Have a great day ahead, everyone. Stay safe, and we will see you at our next session.